You just released the novel Vumani, and it's really powerful. I know it's a fictionalized form of your life experience in Soweto. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, I think that there are three reasons why I decided to write this book. The first one was to narrate the history of my generation, people who grew up in the 70s, and just to highlight the kind of struggles that they had to contend with living under a vicious apartheid system.
It's not just the content. For me is Nume. He urges us to submit, not just to submit to all the oppressive things that happen around us, but also to submit to the urge to struggle, to submit to the understanding that he has to write this thing, to try and put a face to this pseudo-political history that has been sold to us. To, as an honest writer, to want us to understand that this history and this story is not just a story of straight and direct narrative, but it's a story of contradiction. For us to understand that the struggle between the corporeal and the spiritual is as mutual as it can be.
Well, I think the book couldn't come at a better time. The time warranted it to come. Apartheid was a very vicious system, extremely so. What you're seeing in Palestine is almost the same as what we were seeing. We were treated as animals, if not lesser human beings. So, like there's a scene I'm describing in the book when the police let loose the dogs on the protagonist, that is Vumani, and his cousin Lunga. And they did that just for training purposes. They were training those dogs on how they should treat human beings, fellow human beings, to be specific, Africans, black Africans. So yeah, that's what apartheid system was. Not only that, you had you were discriminated from the time you become conscious that you are alive. Then you see that there's something wrong. Everything that is done for you is like second class. They third class, I mean to say. They subject you to poverty. They subject you to small houses that are like hovels, which we called matchbox houses. They turn those houses into prisons because you are not allowed to have two doors. You only have to have one door. That is the door you use to exit to enter the house as well as exit the house. Like almost everything, even the schools were just terrible, and they force you to learn in the language of the oppressor, which I believe is what sparked the June 1976 upheavals.
What is your original language?
My original language is Swati, but there were no Swati schools in Orlando East where I grew up, so I was forced to learn Zulu.
So you spoke Zulu at home and with your friends, but at school it had to be in English, yeah?
Yes, we spoke Zulu in the surrounding areas, but at school it was compulsory that we learn in English and Afrikaans.
Nume, when one reads the book, it's quite obvious that the writer portrays the story of apartheid via the eyes of a young child who grew up in Soweto. The main character went through such atrocity, and yet there's no bitterness, there's no ounce, name or trace of bitterness in Vumani. Could you explain how he was able to free himself of bitterness?
I think that's a very important question that you're asking. So, interwoven to a story is a broader spiritual struggle, Vumani's spiritual struggle, towards trying to free himself spiritually. But then it moves from the basis that it's not by accident that we've been born in that kind of system. So spiritually we were supposed to do something to change our circumstances. So that is why I don't necessarily have to be angry or bitter about my vicious past. I don't want to lie. My past was extremely terrible, extremely so, to an extent that, I've buried so many siblings, so many friends, so many peers, so many comrades, to an extent that I've lost count. But yeah, as I say that, I think that's the kind of life that I was destined for. So there's no need to be angry or be bitter over that kind of life. It's something that I signed for when I came into this world, and yeah, I don't have to be bitter.
Nume, when one reads the book, a question that arises in one's mind is this book a biography or an autobiography? I asked you this at the launch, so could you tell us your answer, please?
Obviously, I am not Vumani, I am Nume Mashinini. So, so Vumani and me are two different characters. But then the book is a fiction with autobiographical details. And why I did it that way is that although it is my story, but someone who grew up during our times will relate with it. So, and that is why I've made each and every character some kind of a composite character. It doesn't represent only that specific character, but the character represents almost all my peers, comrades, or friends. Yeah. So, in short, I would say this is a fictional non-fiction or a non-fictional fiction. Yeah.
I want to ask you, how would you like to see this book used out in the community, in the world? What is your hope for it?
Well, firstly, I think people should know that history is not made by the so-called, great men of history, but it is made by mostly the ordinary women and men. You know, sometimes we would never see or appear, or whether in a cursory detail in the history books. So I would like people to see this as a historical text, as something that happened, and as something that should never happen again. I would like it's dedicated obviously to all the children. So I would who suffer, you know, in different circumstances because of oppression and any other forms of oppression. So I would like the people to use it never again to oppress other people, let it be because of race, gender, or whatever, but never to oppress people. And I would like it to be used as a tool of peace. It's actually a book. Vumani simply means that agree. So it mostly it's a spiritual, African spiritual code. When you go for divination, so you have to keep on saying Vumani, Vumani when they tell you whatever you came there for, when they do a psychic reading for you. So Vumani, it's like I've written it as a book that is a divination. It's a book that makes people confess and say, yes, we've done the wrongs and we need to make amends. That is why when I told this to some of the friends, they concluded that it's a book that reads people. That's read the readers and not the other way around.
You are also trained as a sangoma, and that also appears in the book, and it's very much part of the way that the Black African people who have suffered from apartheid manage their situation. Tell us what it really means to be a sangoma, this kind of calling.
I'll define a sangoma as someone who knows how to die and resurrect. So that's essentially, that's what it is for me. Because literally you do go into a trance and access the world, or the other world, and come back, you know. This so training as a sangoma teaches you, and that's where also it links to the question Megla asked earlier on. It teaches you never to be bitter in life, because you know that whatever happened to you was bound to happen. But then also you know that whatever happens to you, it comes as an experience, a learning experience that makes you become a better person. So that's what sangoma means. But it also means it doesn't end there. It also means that tapping into the world of, in this case, the world of the ancestors, and hearing what the ancestors want you to do in this world. And in most cases, it's making the world, living the world better than it was before you came into this world. So you tap into that space, they remind you of your mission and everything, and then you journey your life according to what they say to you.
Nume, you mentioned spiritual healing. That was one of the reasons you wrote the book. Could you tell us more about that? This is a very interesting and unusual concept.
Okay, thank you. You see, and in most cases, that's the aspect that is neglected mostly. You know, you can go psychological healing, you can go physical healing, but spiritual healing is very much neglected. People would go to church and say they go there for spiritual healing. So spiritual healing tap into right into the core of your trauma of your trauma or of your wound, and look at what causes that wound. You know, it can be a wound of an individual, it can be wounds of a community, it can be wounds of the nation. It looks into the causes of those wounds, and then from there come up with solutions for those wounds, for the causes, not the symptoms. So in that case, you would go through the rituals, and which are best explained in the book here in the chapter in the chapter titled "The Seeds of Withered Dandelions."
What else would you like to say? What would you say to your readers? The book is reading the reader, right?
The book is reading the reader, yes.
How does the book feel about the reader?
Well, there's one friend who's just finished the book, and he says, "Yeah, I'm the subject of your book, and you know, after reading your book, I am definitely going to write a book myself, because that's what your book said to me." So that's one reader. So each and every reader, I think it will like do some kind of a definition and say to the reader what is it that they have to do, and then based on their message, so they'll do whatever they have to do. It's not a one size fits all. It depends on the reader.
As you know, apartheid has passed in South Africa for decades. Okay.
Yeah.
However, the residual trauma is still visible in all aspects of society, both the older generation and the younger ones. What is Vumani saying to them?
In the prologue, the very beginning of the book, I describe a character who walks one of the busiest streets in Johannesburg. He walks naked and is holding a Bible there. So this is not a scene that I manufactured from my head or created. This is a scene that I saw one morning driving to work. So I had to incorporate it. But it speaks exactly to your question. He represents one of our generation, or my generation, who works with trauma. And if you go to the township today, you will see young boys walking like zombies, or girls walking like zombies, and directionless and everything. And that's generational trauma. And also towards the end of the book, it is referred to that kind of trauma, because my generation was called the lost generation. And this generation of our children, some of them are called, but the generation of liberation, of a liberated country. They have no clue whatsoever of apartheid. They grew up under the so-called democracy. But the kind of trauma that they are faced with, and they have inherited from us, their parents, is so terrible. So it feels as if the apartheid ghost is very, very inexorable. It's not easy to shed away from us. So that's unfortunately what the new South Africa is. Yes, there's so much attempts to make it better, but yeah, the kind of trauma and pain is so severe, you know. I don't think it's easy to heal.
Let me ask a little further. There'll be people who see this interview or who read the book who are from completely different cultures and different worlds. And it might be difficult for them to grasp how it can be trauma for someone who has grown up under democracy without any sign of apartheid and yet be walking around like zombies. What is their pain?
So it has got to do with generational trauma. So they've inherited that trauma from their parents. And I'm glad you've asked this question, which is very important. It makes me qualify my response earlier on. They walk like zombies because they are into substance abuse, seriously so. There are no jobs in the country. Even those that who are educated, highly so, are struggling to find jobs, you know. So I think out of boredom, ennui and angst, they end up, you know, abusing substances. So it's so prevalent, extremely so. Almost every second child you come across, it's either they abuse a substance in one way or another. So, and that's what has turned them into these walking zombies. And the sad thing is that it makes one, you know, a bit pessimistic about the future.
I was going to ask you, how do you see the future?
Well, I always define myself as a toxic optimist. Yes, but yeah, that's how I define myself as.
What's a toxic optimist?
You know, I'm optimist to an extent that it becomes dangerous. Like I'm eternally optimistic, and you know, there's a reason for this, and I think that's exactly what the spirituality or the role played by the spirituality in our struggle, because in the past, you know, it was extremely unthinkable that apartheid was going to fall. Extremely unthinkable. But we kept the hope. Spirituality made us, you know, keep the hope, keep the faith. And here it is now. It is completely gone. It's history. And now we are faced with different struggles. And yeah, but I'm optimistic that as time goes by, all this will be fine. And yeah, the coming generations will inherit a better country.
You have a daughter who is also a child who didn't go through apartheid. how do you see her fitting into the future, and what have you done to help her move forward?
Well, they say that education is a door that opens all the doors. So the first thing that I do, I made it a point that I give her the best education. Took her to private schools, and that's where she acquired her education, and took her to one of the best universities in South Africa, or one of the universities that is regarded as the best universities in South Africa, which is Witwatersrand. But I also instilled some values and ethics that I grew up with, most unfortunately, she's unemployed now, and to an extent that, in spite of her education, to an extent that, I even think that she's unemployable. But here comes again that hope for me, that I'm hopeful that she'll make it in life, she'll be, things will change for her, and she'll be a better person, and live a very decent life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Shanti.